All right, welcome everybody to today's Zoom workshop on how to set up a bank account, particularly with PSECU. And today our workshop will be led by Jasmine Campbell. I will let her introduce herself and take it away. So welcome.
Guys, thank you for having me. As Corey just said, my name is Jasmine Campbell. I work with PSECU. I'm super excited to see you guys. Normally, I am right across the street from where you guys are located, right in the Bunnell building. We're in that neon green office right behind the security desk, right over this Bunnell. So you usually can't miss us. We're the Financial Education Center. Normally, you'll see myself, you'll see other college students who are interns working there. And our whole purpose, our whole mission is to talk about financial education. So we want to be here for anybody who's, whether they're starting off and signing up for your first account and, saving up for a particular goal, moving out, getting your first car, buying a house, starting a business, whatever it is. And we're also here for people who are, really looking to refinance or, take on any more complicated financial topics if they've been at it for a few years. So we're here to help. We're here to answer questions, anything that you can think of, we want to be able to help you with. So always feel free to ask questions. That's actually going to be a theme throughout this presentation. From what I understand, you guys have really exciting opportunities right now. People are looking forward to potentially having grants coming their way, to having jobs, to having all sorts of things going on, things that involve finance, right? Things that involve money. So everybody here has reasons to use a debit card or use some sort of card to pay for something that's digital, right? We're not using a lot of cash right now. So with that in mind, I want everyone to feel, by the end of this presentation, I want everyone to feel really comfortable knowing what options are out there for them when it comes to banking. And that's whether it's for-profit banking or not-for-profit banking. Clearly have a preference towards not-for-profit banking, but I want you guys to have options with signing up for checking and savings accounts, know what features to look for, know how to shop around, know how to feel confident in asking the questions, because you guys deserve the best. There's so much competition out there that you guys deserve to be able to know that you're getting the best and most competitive features. So without much further ado, I'm going to jump right into it and show you where we'll get started. We'll start with the educational part first, and then we'll get into the specifics about signing up for an account. But I want you guys to feel comfortable about what you're looking for. All right.
And Jasmine, anything you want to share on the screen, I made you co-host, so feel free to share
Oh,
away.
perfect. Thank you. That is perfect
Of
timing.
course.
All right, I'm going to share my first screen and I'll just show you guys where we're getting started. All right, let me push this button. There we go. All right, let me know if you guys can see my screen. Awesome. All right, so welcome to PSECU. I'm going to put a link in the chat real quick. This is a place where if you want to follow along, if you're on your PC or, if you want to do a dual screen, however you want to arrange it. We're going to be working off of launching from this website and starting with an educational tool there first and foremost. So let's see if I can see the chat real quick. Bear with me 1 second, y'all.
I can put it in the chat if that's easier.
Oh, yeah, if you don't mind. Sorry, mine is it's showing me one or the other. It's not showing me both. So we'll just follow along this way. All right, but we're basically on PSECU.com. Fun bit of trivia. PSECU is a credit union that started off as the Pennsylvania State Employees Credit Union, but you might ask yourself, what are we doing at a college campus? And I just want to let you guys know, it's here, it's for everybody. We expanded to 22 different campuses, and we specifically stuck to community colleges and state schools. We, hold on to the concept of being a not-for-profit, making sure we're available to the people, to the community. It's not like, we're not looking to be nationwide necessarily and make up $1 bajillion by expanding in that way. We're trying to really be something that's local and available for people.
Can I ask a question off rip?
Please.
Because this is, I truly don't even know this. What makes a bank not for profit versus for profit?
Good question. So if it's okay, do
your thing. I'm sorry. I'll say the questions for later.
It's a good question. No. I'm trying to think of the good way to organize it. And I want to say, if you're just standing outside of a financial institution, right, and you see a sign and it seems to imply it's a bank or credit union, and you're trying to figure out, okay, is it worth it? What kind of place is this? One of the first things that might be easier for you to understand or remember is that anytime you see a bank, it's going to be for profit. Anytime you see a credit union, it's going to be a not-for-profit. And that distinction helps a little bit really quick, just making a quick snap decision, because the way credit unions work is that at the end of the day, they're member owned and operated. And that might just sound like a phrase, but what that really means is that in being a not-for-profit, you literally are owned by the people who have essentially a checking and savings account with you. And so basically a bank is driven by the idea that like we're for profit, we want to make money, we have shareholders, we have a board, we have a CEO that we answer to, we have, you know, at the end of the day, or excuse me, at the end of the year, you know, fourth quarter, we want to make sure we're hitting our numbers, people are getting their bonuses, we've shown X% of growth, and basically everybody's trying to get rich. And that's fine, because that can be banking for some people in the for-profit world, and that's okay. But PSECU story and credit union story in general, they start very, very differently. They actually had special permission to form in the earlier 1900s. And PSECU specifically started after the Great Depression, or sorry, around the time of the Great Depression, 1934. But the problem that people had is that they already had banks. You know, they knew what banks were about, but they were really frustrated with the lack of protections that existed for the individual person. And so you guys can imagine, like, we can be frustrated with banks today. So the idea of having overdraft protection in the 1930s and, you know, making sure that if banks lost all our money or lost all their money, we didn't lose our money too. Like, a lot of people didn't have those protections. And so credit unions came around and they were formed by the people. PSECU was literally started with 22 people. Now we've since grown. We have more than 400,000 people and $6.5 billion in assets, but they started with $22. And so it's very much a community-based idea. They've kept it local to PA, I guess, more like a regional institution now. But just remember that when you think about the growth, like at the end of the year, when there's supposedly profit or what have you, when there's any kind of excess, the difference between PSECU and other financial institutions, and depending on credit unions, how they operate, but credit unions take their leftovers and they either reinvest in the organization, or PSECU specifically gives you that money back at the end of the year. So you might just get a membership reward, and you know what would have been somebody's $100,000 bonus or $1 million bonus at maybe a for-profit bank, right, where other people are just kind of getting rich off of the institution. At credit unions, it's going back to the people. It's very much a not-for-profit. So when you think about the community, you could think about any kind of organization of people, essentially, a group of students, group of employees, but usually it's focused, credit union is focused around a specific type of group of people, and it's them essentially taking care of each other and their own finances. So you'll get more competitive interest rates, and just there's less waste, there's less like middlemen sort of trying to put money in their pocket. Does that make sense? Is that like a
Makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Awesome. No, I'm glad to hear. I could talk about it for years, so let me know if it's too much or too little. But just wanted you guys to have a chance. So we're on psecu.com to see the website real quick. We're going to go to our learning center, because we are going to start from there. And you'll see it takes us to this really awesome educational website with like 5-minute clips. And I like to mention this just because if you want to wrap your head around any topic, and I really do mean any topic, you know, whether you're looking to start a business, whether you're looking to buy your first home, whether you're thinking ahead about retirement, maybe one of your parents is getting ready to retire, or you want to think about, you know, being one of those people who can retire by 40. Like, if you click on any of these, I promise you at any age of your life, these will be good refreshers for you. They're only about 5 minutes each, but they really offer you a quick breakdown of the essentials that you want to understand. Now for us, we're going to be skipping ahead a little bit, well, skipping around a little bit, but we are going to start here with financial foundations, in case you were following along, so you can see how we're going to get to where we're going. And we are going to go straight into checking accounts. Now, normally this will just be around your first screen. I already went through this one, but we're going to be talking about the different types of things that you guys might already know about checking accounts, but then also categories of things that you want to look for when you're deciding where to put your money, right? Because let's be honest, we all know that there's, and no offense to them, but we know about Cash App, we know about Venmo, we know about PayPal, and they're great institutions that do a lot of things really well, right? And they're very useful for what they do, but there's also still a purpose in the world for banks and credit unions, and each of them do things a little bit differently, and some do certain things better than others. So I want to do a fair job of representing each of those, and just making sure that you guys want to make a decision for yourself as to where to start or why people start at one institution versus another. You have an informed way of making your own choices. All right. So when you guys think about finance, right? This is something that's going to set apart a lot of the online systems from a bank or credit union. First thing that you notice is that we have checking accounts, right? A checking account is basically where you're going to do your main transactions. When you essentially say, I want a safe place to put my money, and you say, okay, instead of keeping my money wherever, in a mattress, instead of going to a check cashing place, anything like that, you say, I want to put my money somewhere where no matter what happens to me or my card or my funds or my, you know, my physical possessions, I know my money is insured up to $250,000, come hell or high water. Like it'll always be there. And that's one of the first things we emphasize is that a checking account is a safe place for you to put your money and access it quickly in the digital world. All right. So the more official explanation is here. It's a financial tool that offers everyday access to your funds and provides an effective way for you to track your budget. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but I will say, especially individuals who are looking to pay attention to finances and budgeting and things like that, having a checking account online is going to be a great way to start keeping track of what you're spending. And if you do want to save for something, because we should always be saving, at least paying ourselves first, right? If you want to keep track of specifically where your money's going, this is a great place to start tracking it. All right. So let's think about why we might choose a checking account over other types of options out there, right? And so we know about convenience. We know we want to make sure that we can spend money when we want to, when we're going to pay for something at a store. But also keep in mind too, some people choose where they're going to go by proximity, and that's okay. You might want to choose a bank or credit union in the area where you're going to be. So if you plan on going to college in a different place across country in a couple of years or the next few months even, you might want to look up, okay, where will I do my local banking? I like having that face-to-face. So will there be a local branch, a local credit union, or just nearby resources, ATMs even, to make sure I can get access to it? So I will say, when you need mom or dad to send you money, you want to make sure you have access on both ends of the equation, right? And then other things too that are just really convenient. You guys tell me, you may or may not be at the point where you guys are paying your own bills, but you tell me, is anybody here paying their own cell phone bill, paying their own, let's see, Xbox subscription, Netflix subscription, things like that, right? When we think about where we want to have that pulled from, you can just easily set that up to a debit card or a checking account and know that it's going to come out consistently. You don't have to worry about anything bouncing or information being wrong. Like you can set up with an account number, et cetera, and just make your life a little bit easier, right? And then this next one is really important for everybody, right? All of us. When it comes to direct deposit, we know what season it is, right? Some people have just recently gotten their refunds from school. Some people are looking to get their IRS refunds, right? There's so many reasons why we use direct deposit, our ongoing jobs, things like that, side business, any of it. We want to make sure that we have a safe place to put our money and also a place that doesn't charge us anything to put our money where it goes, right? Because at the end of the day, you guys worked for it. We have things coming out of our money like taxes, et cetera, but we don't need any additional fees coming out. So when you look for, whether it's with us as a credit union or other credit unions or other banks, just make sure you look for a place that always gives you direct deposit for free, because there's never a reason you guys should have to pay for that. Any financial institution worth its salt, so to speak, is going to make sure you have free direct deposit, okay? And then last but not least, we talked about tracking your spending, right? There's going to be a lot of really useful reasons why we want to track it, but we want to keep that in the forefront of our minds. All right. And security. So has anyone here heard of identity theft? Has anyone had any personal experience with identity theft? And that can include, whether it's having an account hacked, having a card, like the card number stolen, or like a card copied or anything like that. When we think about those types of issues, it's kind of scary how fast things can happen in the 21st century, right? The digital world, things move very, very quickly. So one of the advantages that's going to come from you using either a credit union or a financial institution that's frankly legit and form like a financial institution, like a bank or a credit union, is going to have certain protections in place. So there are regulations from either the FDIC or the NCUA. I'm sorry, these are just random acronyms, but they're federal institutions that ensure that you as a consumer are protected. You as a member, you as a consumer are protected. So if your debit card is stolen, heaven forbid, if your information is, taken off of a magnetic strip from God knows where, there are protections in place at both banks and credit unions that ensure that you aren't liable for that as long as you report it to them within a certain number of days. Usually it's 2 days. But those types of protections are built in place, and that'll make your transactions more secure than a lot of other methods, right? A gift card won't necessarily protect you from money that was lost on XYZ. A Cash App card, much as I love them, no offense to them, but they may not protect you for $50 worth of XYZ fraudulent charges. There are some places that when you call them and you reach out to the customer service, they're either going to be there or they're not. They're either going to have a phone number online, or they're going to be like, good luck with this chatbot. There's going to be places that support you and other places that leave you holding the bag, sort of, when it comes to security issues. So be mindful of that when you're trying to choose between, do I want to stick with just, what I'm using now, or do I want to check out financial institutions? And any questions along the way, please let me know, because I know some of this stuff just kind of pops up in our life randomly, so feel free. And then flexibility. This is the part where I have to say, banks and credit unions have been doing a lot to catch up recently. I know 5-10 years ago, transferring money between institutions was just frustrating. It was costly. You know, people were out there looking for Western Union locations. It was a lot. We were writing checks and it was a lot. Now today, I have to say, especially credit unions, they've caught up. And what I mean by that is if you want to transfer money to your friends, you can use some of the services that you already use, whether it's Zelle, PayPal. They work with credit unions. It's just as fast. You don't have to worry about like feeling like you're in a, you know, working with dinosaurs when you actually go to transfer your money or pay bills online. So just be mindful that institutions are actually here and they're in the 21st century to join you. All right. And let's move on to the next section here. Let's get you guys over real quick. There we go. All right, so just be mindful too, in case anybody's thinking about starting your own business account or anything like that, be mindful that there are a lot of different types of ways that financial institutions can help you. So we know about personal checking accounts, right? That's when you get a debit card in the mail. It might have a little Visa logo in the bottom right-hand corner, you know, just to help you, you know, track your spending, withdraw from ATMs, things like that. But there's also different types of checking accounts. So if you're starting your first business, you might want to look into a business checking account, right? You might want to kind of go legit in that way. Or if you have a not-for-profit or a group club, you know, there are organizational not-for-profit accounts you can start as well. Places where you can make your transactions legit and start your record keeping, just to give you some peace of mind in that process. And here too, if you're thinking ahead, like if you guys might have heard of student accounts or custodial accounts. If you have younger siblings or any children or anything like that, family members that you want to start looking out for and maybe introducing them to the banking world in a safe way, you might want to start with a custodial account for them, where you can help save money up for them. Usually they have higher interest rates in that you can earn more money from the money that you save for them, different perks like that. So there's a lot of different types of checking accounts, you know, joint checking accounts, et cetera, depending on what you might need them for and where you are in your life. And now for the fun part. So let me just ask, pre-COVID or even during COVID or depending on where we are and what we're doing, who here has opened up their own like checking account in person or online already? Oh, okay, I see a hand. Okay, 2 hands, nice. All right, do you guys remember the kind of like paperwork you
I
needed?
remember my first semester.
Actually, I think I remember you coming into the office. Do you remember like some of the process? Like I said, I think you remember you coming into the office and you remember like the documents you needed and things like that?
Yep, I had to come in with the boys.
Yeah, you had to come in prepared. And so some of these steps might be familiar, but
IDs
and... I'm just going to read this down.
Yeah, I think he was saying 2 IDs. Yeah, you're right, Kiana.
Oh, yep.
Right now I got to use my money.
Got you. I'm going to put you back on mute, bro.
Here we go. So, you know, some of this is just really familiar to you guys. You might go to sign up for an account online. 99% of the time, it's going to be online nowadays. But you'll see that it's just going to ask you for some sort of government ID, right? So driver's license, state ID, passport, just depending on what you might have. And then a lot of places will ask you to confirm your address. With PCCU, because you're students, as long as you can show your CCP ID, you don't need most of this stuff unless you've recently moved or anything like that. Like if there's any kind of discrepancy in the system where perhaps your address is out of date or things like that. But these are good things to just know where you have them. So if you're signing up for any kind of financial account of any kind, it's good to bring at least like 2 of these with you. All right. And then you guys know, you'll complete the application. Be mindful, you definitely need your social. You'd be surprised the number of times that this comes up and somebody's like, what was the last 4 digits or the first 4 digits? It comes up, just double check, reach out to your mom, reach out to whoever you need to, you know, pull out the card itself. Just, you know, make sure you can pull it off the top of your head, all right? And then last but not least, there might be an obligation to fund your account depending on the institution you go to. Some places might offer you a student account and say, hey, it's free for now, everything's free, you don't have to pay any minimum deposit, blah, blah, blah. And then they might institute a fee a little bit later, so just a heads up. But for PCCU, it's going to be free for you guys to start, and it'll be free forever because you're joining as part of the membership group as CCP students. So just an FYI. And I think we have a question from Angelo Campbell. Feel free to unmute.
Yeah, I had a question. My question was, can you set it up online? This is like online too as well. Like you can set it.
Yeah, I'm super glad you asked. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there's like a lot of places are trying to convert because of COVID, right? So for example, just a quick I'm going to show you guys this ahead of time. there's a couple things that you might want to look at. And one thing that I might send you to first is, it'll take us right back to this website, but psecu.com/students is a great place for you guys to get started. Basically, you'd start online. You'll see here, you'll come back to this page. It'll let you know that currently for students around the state, there's a bonus, it's $100. But basically, you just click here.
Wait, what's that mean? $100? Can you, that's,
yeah. So yes, there's $100. That means that once you finish signing up, and again, completely free, you take a picture of your ID, upload any information that you might need to complement that, but usually just a picture of your ID and your CCP ID. You fill out, it takes about 10-15 minutes to do the application. It's not usually that long. But after you're done answering all these questions and submitting it, your account will usually be open in about 1 to 2 days. And then once it's open and you have your account number and PIN and you set up your online banking, you have done everything that you need to do to qualify for the $100. So it'll be put in the following month. I think it's usually a 45-day window is what they say, but usually the following month, like the 15th of the following month, they'll deposit it right in your savings account. So it's a super straightforward promo. You sign up for online banking and you're good to go. Ooh, and I think I might have just gotten the same pop-up, but I think I see a raised hand.
Yeah, Angelo, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
The same process for a savings account too, or that's another?
Yeah. No, I'm so glad you asked. This training, I know it focused a lot on the checking account and just from a human level. Usually when you sign up for accounts, something that I definitely want to recommend is that you have both a checking and a savings. PSECU automatically gives you both. Some institutions give you one or the other, and there's different reasons for both. But something that you might want to be aware of is that a checking account is meant to be used for your day-to-day transactions, et cetera, et cetera. But a savings account is usually where people store their money, like the name, right, save. But it's usually because the interest rate is a little bit higher. And additionally, the federal government also places a few more restrictions on everyone's savings accounts. So you might have had a savings account and heard like, okay, if I withdraw from this 6 times in a month, I'm cut off, or they charge me a $30 fee if I do it more than 6 times, or different things like that, right? Savings accounts are definitely structured, like I said, at the federal government level to be where you keep your money. They expect you to have fewer transactions there. So you can deposit, direct deposit, things like that don't count against your 6 times sort of magical number, but withdrawing and things like that, they want you to be a little more cautious with it. And like I said, there's pros and cons to that. It's frustrating when we're like, oh, but this is my money. Why can't I get it all the time? You can. That just means that you need to put it in your checking account. A savings account is definitely a place that has a slightly higher interest rate, meaning it'll help you earn money on the money that you're saving a little bit faster. But it does mean that it should remain untouched a little bit longer. Does that make sense? Yeah, your debit card, and I'm glad you asked that. Your debit card, when you go to swipe for your average transaction, it'll always come from your checking account. The only exception to that is when you're literally standing in front of an ATM and you're like, okay, I'm putting this debit card into this machine and I'm choosing savings and I specifically want to withdraw or transfer from a savings account. Unless you specifically select savings, that won't necessarily come up as something that is used for your typical interactions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I have one more question.
Yeah, go for it.
Are you able to transfer funds from another bank to PSECU? Like if I were to transfer funds over, could you do that?
Absolutely. And I'm really glad you asked that. It reminds me of that one slide that we were talking about where you can do the modern day transactions you're looking to do. And there's the old school way and the new school way. Before, back in the day, for you to transfer somebody money, you had to, or even to yourself, you had to have an account number and a routing number. An account number, you guys know about, it's attached, it comes directly from the institution, right, that you sign up with. And then the routing number, or the account number specific to you, and then the routing number might be one per institution or et cetera, et cetera. It's usually on their website, just a general one for everybody, depending on the state you're in, blah, 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 blah. But with that being said, you also have a lot of other options too. So what we're seeing now and what I'm seeing between credit unions, between banks, is that they work really well with other institutions. A classic one is PayPal, right? It's one of the oldest ones. It was probably the first one to make it competitive to transfer. But PayPal is probably one of the fastest ways to transfer with PSECU. But I can say from personal experience, I've used Cash App, Venmo, and PayPal, and all of them allow me to transfer money back and forth between relatives or between accounts and things like that. So good question. It's very relevant. If you ask me which one's fastest for PSECU, I'd say PayPal, but I also say the other three I know for a fact work. And do you guys have any questions about just while we're on the topic of like transferring, do you guys have any questions about secure checks or wire transfers or anything like that that might have come up for you before? It's a weird topic. It's like one of those like 1 in 100 type topics. So no worries. All right, let me go back to where we were real quick. Okay. All right, so talked about setting it up. Okay, so we talked about transferring money, which is well timed. Some places when you sign up for the first time, they'll ask you to fund your account. This is where we'll start talking a little bit about fees. Some places say, okay, for you to open an account with us, you have to show up with $50, or you might have to at least have 15, or there's a range. But just be mindful, a lot of credit unions usually have the more reasonable terms. They aren't expecting you to be multimillionaires to get started. So a credit union is definitely a place that you want to start looking first, especially if you have the opportunity. And with PSECU, it's free. With a lot of us students' accounts, it's at least free upfront. PSECU is free forever. With credit unions, usually if you join as a member, there's a lower cost to getting started. So just an FYI. All right. And then some of these factors down here, they talk about some of the perks of having a checking account and checkings account. And one of the things that you want to be mindful of is just that you can pay your bills online from here. If you're one of those people who likes to see all their bills in one place, and this might be something that applies to your life when you are really, really busy. Like if you're working 2 jobs, you're going to school full time, you have 3 different, credit cards, and it might just be easier if you pay all of your bills from one account. One of the things that I found that was super helpful to me when I was kind of going back to school and things like that and working and all that at the same time was having one account, actually creating a secondary checking account for myself where I'd set up direct deposit to make sure I funded it with a specific amount of money every month. And I used that one account for nothing other than paying those bills. So if I knew my insurance was going to be $200, that was in this account. If I knew my car payment was going to be $200, I set that amount to come out of my paycheck, just direct deposit into this one checking account. And that's a place where when you set up, whether it's online bill pay through their website or online bill pay through PSECU's website itself, you can just make sure you're watching all of your transactions, but also you can always make sure you set aside enough for it every month. Because if you set aside your direct deposit to go straight there first, especially with your job, most payroll HR companies will let you do this. HR departments will let you do this where you just set aside, let's say $600 a month. And okay, with this, I can at least cover my rent, my car, and my blank. And it's a good way for you to just make sure, like for a personal level, you can always feel secure that your bills are going to be paid because it's from this untouched account. It essentially runs itself over time because it's set up on direct deposit, right? Direct deposit and then auto withdrawal. So just a little insider tip if you guys are thinking ahead about how you want to like structure some of your spending and savings and things like that. All right. And this one you guys know about, but I also like to emphasize real quick. You always want to add alerts to your checking accounts. Things happen quickly in the 21st century. So if you ever feel worried, like, oh, I want to make sure I'm notified if something ever comes out of my account or if my card is ever stolen or if there's ever a bill or this or that, you can set up automatic alerts, get a little text message, a little push notification, just say, here's what's going on with your account, here's a transaction. And it can just be there for peace of mind. And then if you see anything odd or anything's double billed or anything like that, you also know immediately. So you don't have to worry about it, like discovering it a month after the fact, right? And this one here too, if you're switching to a new account, they always like to say before you close an old account, just double check if you have any kind of ongoing subscriptions, like, we talked about LA Fitness earlier. If there's something that just automatically pulls money out, you definitely want to double check that and just make sure there's no misunderstandings, no leftover fees. All right. And this next part, I'm going to skip a little bit. I don't know how often you guys actually have to write checks anymore, but just an FYI, let's think ahead to your first apartment, right? Maybe some of you already have your first apartment, power to you. But oftentimes when you're thinking ahead, you're like, all right, I'm moving out. My landlord asked me for my first, last, and security deposit. You're probably going to have to fill out one of these old fashioned buddies. So right over here, you'll see the structure, right? Usually you'll receive, and PSECU gives you free checks. Ask when you sign up for your first account or sign up for a new checking and savings account with the institution what their policy is on checks, because some places just don't give them out for free anymore. They might charge you for them. So just be mindful. Some places still give them for free. Like I said, we still give them for free. But you'll see your name, your address printed here. You fill out the date. You'll write whoever it's going to and the amount that it'll be for. And then this is the part that might seem a little unintuitive. You do actually have to write it out old-fashioned style, like this is literally for 200 TWO $100 down there. You can make a note what it's for, just for yourself. You'll receive a digital copy of it later, and then you just sign it at the bottom, and you're all set.
I wonder for the students, did you have to learn how to write a check in high school?
You know what? It's
'Cause-
funny. I remember by the time I filled out my first check for an actual purpose, I had forgotten everything I had learned in high school.
Yeah.
But there was one health teacher, I think, who pulled us aside and like just randomly between whatever else we were learning was like, you guys are going to learn how to write a check today.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure I'd ever use it, but it did.
Right.
It did come up.
I haven't used mine in like 5 years though. But
That's what I mean. It's like, I
it's good
swear
for the
it's
years I did.
right. I'm like, you might have a few stacks, like just on the side now of these old checkbooks that you're like, how am I ever going to use these hundreds of, but I digress.
Yeah.
They're good to have when you need it. And
Indeed.
yeah, it's the old fashioned way of transferring money. So for example, I think one time I needed to like pay my friend and we just had opposite institutions and they were like dead set against Cash App, Venmo, PayPal. They were just very anti-digital that. And so I ended up having to write them an old fashioned check. And they're good to have around. It really is just the old fashioned way of transferring money. There you have it. But, let's see, we're gonna skip ahead a little bit here. All right, so you guys know about debit cards or Cash App cards or Venmo's version of a debit card, right? You guys have seen some version of this, right? And we think about some of the advantages and some of the disadvantages when people are really trying to decide if they want to become banked, right? Because there's some folks out there who are unbanked, is the phrase that they use in the industry, meaning they literally keep their cash in a mattress. Like that's just how they do it. It's a choice. It's one way to do it, but there are pros and cons to each, right? So with your debit card, you always have cash on hand, but you also know that it's safer, right? If heaven forbid any one of us was mugged tomorrow, our money would still be safe, right? We'd have ways to track our digital transactions and things like that. Nobody would just like steal cash out of our wallet and we'd be out of luck. This makes it a little bit more safe than that, you know? We know that there's security built into it. So a lot of the new cards have like the chips in it, right? That makes us a little more secure. So even if someone implants something called a skimmer, you know, which actually scans the bottom of your magnetic strip on the back of your card. Even if somebody like takes that part of your card information without the chip, they shouldn't actually be able to accomplish much because of the fact that the security has been improving for the card. So just little things like that make your life a little bit easier or a little safer, you know, along the way. And be mindful too, something that's a pretty cool perk that I'm starting to see more with debit cards is that they offer you cash back perks that I used to only see myself with credit cards. So just as a fun tidbit, I'm going to switch screens real quick. And just as an FYI, shameless plug, for PSECU, when you sign up for a debit card with us, we do offer cash back. So for example, you go to buy a sandwich and a cup of coffee. Let's say it's 12 bucks. You're going to earn either 5 cents or 10 cents back, and you're at least going to get 5 cents just for existing and having an account with us. And then the 10 cents is awarded if you have direct deposit set up with us. So no matter what, you're going to swipe, you're going to get a bonus. Anything over $10, you're earning money back for. And it's just one of those perks that they try to introduce so you don't feel like you have to use a credit card just to see perks or to earn a little bit of money back when you spend. So that's just a fun tidbit. And then, so those are some real-time rewards. And then something that is good to be mindful of too is just, like I said, we do financial education. So I'm not just going to be like, hey, spend all your money with PCCU. I am going to tell you that when it comes to debit cards, we really do want to track our spending because there have been, you know, psychological studies done. And something that they found in their research is that it really is easier to spend money digitally these days, just because we can push a button, we can wave our phone in front of something, and we don't necessarily literally pull out a calculator, right, and crunch our numbers to say, okay, of the $100 I started with, I now have spent $72 all at one time on Amazon or anything like that, right? So it's a little bit harder for us to, or it's something that we need to be aware of, is that we don't psychologically keep track sometimes of what we spend without like having coins in our hands. So something that we definitely want to be mindful of is just checking out our online accounts. We want to see what's coming and going, right? And then something here too that's really important that I don't think everyone, or I know I for a fact didn't understand before I started building credit, is that opening up your first bank account or opening up your first checking account with a credit union does not actually help you improve your credit. If you want to start building credit, which I recommend whenever you're ready, it's something that you want to be aware of, but banks are a place where you can start building your financial history, more or less a financial relationship with that institution, but it doesn't add to the credit world because it's not a relationship in which you've started borrowing money on the basis that you'll pay it back in the future. This is very much, you know, having a checking and savings account is very much like it's very much real-time transaction based. So if you have $100, you can spend up to $100, period. And that's like the beginning and end of it. Credit is a little more complex. And so just be mindful if you wanted to buy a car or something like that, or have your credit pulled to move out a few years from now, having a checking account will not be the thing that establishes credit for you. That's going to be a little bit different. We'll actually be able to talk about that a little bit later. All right, and then just a heads up too, some credit cards offer you purchase protection. 99.9% of debit cards don't. It's a very random tidbit. I don't know if you guys are already working with credit cards, but this might not apply yet. All right, let's see here. And then this is the part where if everybody like could real quick just tune in, even if you guys are experts, even if you guys are the world's, you're teaching a masterclass on debit cards and checking accounts in 5 minutes. Just be mindful that this is something that's good for all of us to check in on really quick. This is the difference between, frankly, credit unions and banks that I appreciate the most. This is what finally made me leave my first and only bank account, or at least first and only checking account with the bank, I will say. Something that you want to be mindful of is that credit unions and banks have a very different approach to all of these categories, and you want to be mindful of the fact that you will save you and your future self money by paying attention here. So just a heads up. Ask yourself real quick, what is my current monthly maintenance fee? Do I pay any monthly maintenance fees, right? If you have a financial institution to which you are paying monthly fees, ask yourself if you really need to, because there are so many out there that really don't charge you one. For example, PSECU does not charge you a monthly maintenance fee. And also be mindful too that sometimes it's tied into this category here where it's like, oh, well, if you keep a minimum of $500 in your checking account, we'll never charge you. Sometimes they put that off for a few years and they say, oh, as long as you have a student account, we won't charge you, but after you graduate, we will. And just be mindful of these two categories. You shouldn't have to pay a monthly maintenance fee and you shouldn't have to have a minimum balance requirement. With PSECU, you don't have to have either, just a heads up. Be mindful of whether or not you're in a promotional period and it's kind of like sunshine and rainbows, or if it's really all the perks and benefits for the long term, and make sure you're working with an institution, no matter who it is, that doesn't charge you maintenance fees and doesn't have a minimum balance requirement, because there's too many institutions that can do better and make sure they're not charging you either. All right. And then overdraft fees, you want to be mindful of this. With overdraft fees, a lot of places still charge them. Very few places don't charge you some version of it, but some places offer you protection. They might say up to $50 will, give you a little bit of leeway, or if you rectify it in the first 24 hours, we'll give you leeway. PCCU does something where the first one of the year, they waive it, just as a heads up. If you call them and talk, just tell them what happens, if it's a timeline issue, or I ordered something on Amazon and it charged me on Tuesday kind of issue. They work with you to try to straighten that out. And that's something credit unions are usually pretty good for, is just having those human conversations about it. But just be mindful that there should be always notifications available to tell you like, hey, this transaction just went through. So you're always aware of like something that's going on. If there is an overdraft bounce type situation, immediately. And then something here that I like to point out is that ATM fees is a great place for you to sort of choose between institutions. If you're ever like, I like these two banks, or I like these two credit unions, I've heard good things about both. Ask yourself whether or not they have a really competitive ATM offering, meaning that, I'm just going to say this about PCCU because they do it well. They offer you free ATMs, right? They work with the whole network of nationwide ATMs because they partner with other credit unions. So credit unions usually work together. It's a little bit different than other banks, meaning that nationwide, there are more than 30,000 ATMs that you can use, whether you move to California tomorrow or Alaska or XYZ state, meaning that you can go to their ATMs, you use it for free, deposit, withdraw, even if it doesn't say PCCU at the top, as long as it's part of the credit union network, you're okay. And also some places have taken it a step further. For example, PSECU offers you $8 a month back in fees, even if you go out of network. So if you're at a concert and all you see there is I shouldn't name names, but XYZ bank that doesn't belong to you type ATM, they'll give you that money back. PSECU helps you twice over because they do something that other places don't, which is that they don't charge you for you going out of network in the first place, and they reimburse whatever the third party charges you for having used their ATM. So it really helps you out. I remember when I first signed up for my first bank account, it wasn't a credit union account, but I remember I went to Wawa and they were like, oh, free ATM. And I'm like, awesome. And I'm thinking I'm not going to get charged. But then I found out, even though the ATM itself didn't charge me, my own bank charged me for going out of network. And so you want to be mindful that ATM fees can come at you from all sides, right? Try to find a credit union or an institution that you trust that will specifically say, we won't charge you and that we give you money back, because you can have those options for free. Oh, and I think we have a question from Mr. Campbell. Go for it.
Yeah. So you won't have, aren't any ATM fees like with so I can use like a ATM in like a Chinese store or something, like it's just an ATM at the top. and I can like use my card, and that I wouldn't get fee like charged for that.
I'm glad you asked, because the answer is yes. And I think this is definitely something that applies to us if you're going to, local laundromat, local store. Like Philly is great for having so many like locally owned businesses, but sometimes the ATM we see in there is like, who owns this? It's like you might not be sure that it's connected to your local credit union, what have you. And yes, the short answer is yes. They'll withdraw their fee, and then PSECU puts it back in your savings account. They just refund you for it. So you might see it there. It might say like $1.95 for a couple days, but PCCU refunds you in your savings account. Good question. Oh, and let me ask, do you have a follow-up or any other questions? These are good questions. No? All right. You guys are pros at ATMs.
I have one more.
Oh, go for it. Mm-hmm.
So I can't use you can't use a Wells Fargo ATM. Like it has to be like a regular ATM. It can't say like a network. Like it can't have the business name, actual name. So I can't just walk up to like any other bank just to use their ATM. It has to be like.
No, you actually can. So it's funny. Wells Fargo was the example I was going to use at like a concert or whatever. You can absolutely use the Wells Fargo ATMs, the Bank of America ATMs. You can use essentially any ATM across the country and know that if Wells Fargo, like at the end of that transaction, let's say you use the Wells Fargo ATM, you're in a hurry, you just got to go. It'll show you a little screen saying, okay, do you authorize Wells Fargo to withdraw or charge a transactional fee of $3 and X amount of dollars and cents? You can use that and know that PCCU will refund you. They'll reimburse you that money in your savings account. So it applies to all institutions. That's a good question. And it's up to at least $8 a month. There's an additional perk that if you do set up direct deposit with us, they actually give you up to $20 a month back in fees. So, if you have your first job and you're busy and you're kind of running between institutions, like if you like that perk, that might be a reason for you to set up direct deposit with PCCU, just so you know, whenever you're out and you need cash, you're going to get refunded. Most people don't go up to the $20 limit in fees. But it's good to have the option there. It's just peace of mind because we all have to do things like do laundry and get quarters and withdraw for the local restaurant around the corner that has the best cheesesteaks or the best, for me, vegetarian egg rolls and only takes cash. So you definitely want to have some options there. But good questions. Let's see, just to skim through these last few sections here. Wire transfers. I don't know if you guys are looking to do wire transfers, if you ever had to for a large transaction or specific purpose. PCCU does offer them. A lot of institutions still do offer them. This might come into play if you're trying to do something international sometimes, depending on your circumstances and institutions. But just know a lot of institutions are one of the few places where they can offer you wire transfers, and they'll usually be a lot less than other places that do it privately, but aren't banks, if that makes sense. So maybe a Western Union or different places like that. It'll usually be a little more affordable with your XYZ credit union. All right. Also, fun fact too, to take place of wire transfers, I will say PayPal, which is one of our partners that we work with, they do a lot of transfers for free. Even internationally, they actually have local institutions that they work with around the world. So if you do need to transfer money, just be mindful, you probably won't have to do it in the old-fashioned wire transfer way. You'll probably be able to find a much more affordable way to do it through PayPal existing or structures, things like that. And then, oh, sorry, I keep reminding myself of random things. Also, too, if you guys are traveling internationally, when COVID is over, and we are able to go back to things like study abroad and different things like that, I don't know if that's something you guys want to look into. I highly recommend it. But you can use your debit card internationally, too. So, I've used my PCCU debit card as far as South Africa. You can use it throughout Europe. Just know you will be able to get to your money, and the ATM fee reimbursement still applies internationally. So just be mindful that you'll have options as you travel abroad. All right. And then you guys know with debit cards, if you lose it, it's not the end of the world. It's usually just really important to tell your institution as soon as possible. But know that they usually don't charge you. If your institution says that they're charging you for the first time that you lose a card, maybe shop around for other institutions because it's not a normal practice for them to charge you to replace a card. So just FYI. And then other fees that come up are stop payment fees, less common. And you can always make sure that you go to an individual institution's website and just take a look, like when you first sign up, take a glance over what fees they do charge, just to make sure there's nothing there that seems odd, right? And so you guys have learned a lot. You've heard a lot of different things. But just be mindful when you're shopping around for a checking account, you want to look for convenience, right? And what that means to you. So if you know you're someone who uses ATMs a lot and you use cash a lot, you might want to shop around specifically for a bank or credit union that makes sure that they give you back those ATM fees, right? Because these are all options that are available to you, especially with you shopping around at different credit unions and banks. You just want to make sure that they do what you want them to do well. So whether it's, free ATMs and reimbursements, whether it's no monthly minimums or, different things like that, definitely do your research a little bit ahead of time because you're going to have a relationship with them for a few years, right? When we think back to maybe our first institution that we signed up with, our first bank or first credit union, I don't know if it's true for a lot of you, but I know for us, for me, it was very much, I went with the bank that my mom took me to. I was getting ready to go to school. She's like, all right, you need a debit card. I'm like, cool, I'm gonna get a debit card. But I didn't know enough to shop around at like XYZ banks. And I hadn't even heard of credit unions. The closest one for us in this small town in Jersey was 2 counties away. So you guys definitely have an advantage. It's not, 1990 anything anymore. So you guys can go online, you can look up your different credit unions, look up your different banks and see what's out there and competitive for you. You can just click on the checking account section of any bank or website's page and see what they're offering you. And then security, just be mindful, security with any institution you have that is a proper bank or credit union is going to be a little bit better than having cash, right? It'll always be able to help you out a little bit more than that. And then make sure that it's flexible. You guys can connect credit unions these days to Google Pay, Samsung Pay, Apple Pay, any of those. So you want to make sure that it's something that works with your day-to-day life and is flexible for you. All right. So, like I said, please pardon the shameless plug for PSECU. But what I can do real quick is kind of show you guys just what it would look like if you decided you wanted to sign up with PSECU. And we do have the $100 promo going on. So I do want to tell you guys about that since it's specific to you guys as students. All right. You get the promo and you get the free lifetime account. So all of the awesome features that you get, there's free checking, free savings, no minimum monthly balance, no cost to start. They do the ATM reimbursements up to $8 just for having an account. You don't have to jump through any hoops or bells or whistles. You don't have to swipe your card a certain number of times a month or anything like that. You are offered a free account for life. So with that bit, I am going to take us back to, I'll go straight to pseccu.com. If you guys go there /students, here we go. So you guys saw this page before, right? Where it says, anytime, anywhere banking. They mentioned the bonus and getting started, I promise you will be super straightforward. I think everybody's filled out a form or two online before, so none of this will look too scary. But they just give you a heads up. It takes about 15 minutes and you can choose, you obviously just would choose CCP, or if you're getting ready to transfer, like if graduating this year and going to a different state school, choose whichever campus applies to you. But you would go ahead and choose CCP and then you can get started. Now, let me ask, and you don't have to say, but has anyone had any specific experiences or anyone have any questions about the difference between, let's say, a check cashing place or a pay card or, different types of cards that are out there, a PayPal card or, Venmo, Cash App, all that. Do you guys have any questions between those and like the pros and cons versus like banks or credit unions?
Well, I guess I didn't have to read that, but yeah, yeah, check cashing places, like for me, it's the maintenance fees every month. It's unnecessary. I don't see why I need to pay $5 every month to give you guys, and then I have to, for me to withdraw money, I have to pay you to withdraw my own money. So it's like, it's weird to me. But this was,
I'm glad you brought it up.
this was supposed to be temporary, but it really was dragged out a little bit for like had it for a year now. Yeah, so honestly looking for another bank to bank with, but this sounds pretty nice.
Good.
Yeah,
no, I'm glad you mentioned it. I feel like sometimes we go with what we know because it's what's like put in front of us, right? We don't know until somebody introduces it to us or we find it and stumble upon it sometimes. But I'm really glad you pointed that out, which is that innate feeling that you have of like, I really shouldn't have to pay anybody to use my own money. Always hold on to that. That is 112% true. At the end of the day, no matter whose institution it is, they are making money off of the fact that they're holding your money, right? For every dollar that you put in their account, they're at least making, depending on the economy, but they're at least making like 3% or so on you having your money there, because they can take that temporarily and invest it in other things. So while they're making money off of your money, the idea that they would charge you for it is, in the 21st century, very unnecessary, is how I can politely put that. Just be mindful that you can absolutely sign up with a credit union. Make sure that you're not getting charged any monthly fees just off the bat, just for signing up. You aren't charged monthly fees. You don't have to jump through hoops, any of that. I think check cashing places, and they have their own reason to exist in society. They're there to be convenient, so to speak. But honestly, in the 21st century, you can have a check from your job. And for example, with PSECU, you could deposit a check under $1,000 and have it posted to your account within the hour. You don't have to feel like, oh, the only place I can get cash right now is a check cashing place. No, you can have it in your account available to you. So there's a lot of places that do things better, that I think, whereas check cashing places maybe had more of a role in society maybe 10 years ago, there's too much competition now for them to be the only game out there and to charge us $5 a month and to charge us to withdraw our cash, right? Now when there's free stuff out here. And just the heads up, if you're wondering about how this works during COVID or quarantine when it comes to signing up, they mail everything to your house. So for example, PSECU, when you sign up, they mail you a welcome letter, like a little packet. It'll have your account number, your PIN, debit card PIN. You can change all these things if you want to, or set it up to start. They'll also mail your debit card. You can order 1 or 2. And then once you have that, you have your freedom. You set up your online banking. You can deposit checks on your mobile app if you get any. You can transfer money on the mobile app. You can, use your debit card, like we talked about, literally just about anywhere in the world. You can withdraw, use an ATM, conduct a normal transaction, et cetera, et cetera. It'll work like your any other fill in the blank here type card, which is good. It'll just be the not-for-profit side of the thing, so there won't be a.
So would this be considered a credit union?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad you asked. It's a credit union. It's member-owned and operated. Just to go through the stats, we were created in 1934 by 22 state employees who were kind of tired of doing things the old way. They started with $22. They now have, I want to say, $6 billion in assets, if I'm not mistaken. So they've definitely grown. They choose to stick to Pennsylvania because that's their network. They want to stick with state employees and students and help people grow their money that way. But it's definitely a credit union perspective. It's different than some of the nationwide banks where you'll see with they're advertising in the nationwide campaign and this, that, and the other. We spend our money differently. We're not like trying to invest in marketing to get a bunch of people to sign up and pay us fees. We want people to sign up with us and know that they don't have to pay monthly fees and withdrawal fees and things like that. Anybody else have any questions? These have all been really good questions. They're definitely very relevant, and I hope this.
I might have more questions, but I might give somebody else the time. I have lots of questions, but I'll save it.
Nah, Angelo, you bring up a point that I was just about to make. I want to be respectful of Jasmine's time, but Jasmine, if a student wants to reach out to you and ask you more information, how can they contact you?
I am so glad you asked. So you can, if you're just on the run, you literally type in PSECU and you'll get our local number. But you can absolutely email me. You can call me. I will enter my information in so you guys have all that information. But you can absolutely reach out. You have several options, whether you're calling me locally, and I can walk you through, signing up for the account online, or if, you signed up already and you just want some help setting up your online banking or finding a local ATM or just, getting started. My job, and the reason why I still have a job, is because I help people with these questions every day, all the time. So it's not just, setting up banking, it's the financial education part too, which frankly makes my day interesting. So, we get calls about somebody starting their business for the first time and which documents they need, or, okay, I want to build credit. Do you guys have any starter cards? Or I'm saving up for a house. Where do I start? Any of those questions, the whole spectrum, we're happy to help with. Please feel free to reach out, phone number or with my phone number or email address, anything like that. I am more than happy to help with.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you, Jasmine. Round of applause. This has been helpful to me when it comes down to the differentiation between credit unions and all that, and other folks. So, definitely for the people. So I think PSECU is the way to go. So I appreciate you and for the students who attended, you can access Jasmine's email in the chat. So I'm going to, we're going to stop the recording now, and then I'll give you some time to copy all the information down. So 1 second.